So intro wise, I think that everybody knows myself and Aaron. The two of us have been working on allocation on a very regular basis lately because of the whole change with the Fish and Game Department giving the presentation to the commission, which on Friday the commission accepted. So I do have an agenda, and for those of you that have picked up your last email, you can see that. So we're going to start with reviewing what the Fish and Game Commission was, those three motions, and then we're going to look at what IOGA's comments are. So Aaron, I don't know if you can screen down to those. Yeah, so run all the way down to the bottom of that.
Yep.
That thing.
Oh, there we go. Can you all see that?
Looks good on mine.
Well, I can't, so you're gonna have to read it, Jeff.
There was, okay, perfect. So there's the three different motions that they basically adopted just as they were printed onto there. It was kind of what I had expected.
Marlene Robeson joined the meeting.
All right. Hey, Marlene. So the first motion really had to do with setting up the remaining. Oh, you popped a little too quick there, Aaron. Setting up the remaining general elk zones with a cap on the residents, on the non-residents for both A and B tags, and by game management unit for deer. This is a pretty big change for the state. So it encompasses every single remaining general tag. And then the next two is the allocation for elk tags, which basically says they recommend allocating tags in the uncapped A and B zones using the highest reported use for the previous 2 years. And then there was prorated at 58.8%. It's prorated. Well, I'm going to hit that one later. And then the third one is for deer. And again, the commission adopted the staff recommendations to allocate tags for use by outfitted regular deer and white-tailed deer, based on a sliding scale, highest reported outfitted use in the last 2 years, as long as that total doesn't exceed 50% of the non-resident tags for that unit. Any unit where the highest outfitted use exceeds 50% of the total number of non-resident tags available, allocation would be set at 50% of the number of resident tags. So those are the three motions that they accepted. So I would like to go from there to talking about what IOGA's comments to the commission and the department have been. And I'm going to turn that portion over to Aaron. He wrote that letter to them. Aaron?
All right. Well, as I think most of you know by now, and as the letter itself suggests, I'm a little bit long-winded, so I'll try to go fast. I'm also going to turn off my video because I'm getting a notification saying my internet's unstable. So see how that goes. So Jeff covered the motions pretty well. Our message on this has been pretty, well, not pretty, has been consistent throughout. So from the drafting legislation through this process, the summary, I suppose the summary is that, you know, in talking to you, our members, what has come through is that there is a concern about non-resident participation, about congestion in certain areas. Generally, the response has been positive to the notion of non-resident participation reduction until we start talking about the other things here, which are the operative one being how the department chose to interpret the crucial portions of statute that bear on outfitter allocation. So to those, the thrust of our letter is bears on, or our comment bears on that interpretation. And there are two real areas that are of import in that interpretation. One is, or the key one is that the number of tags allocated to outfitter hunters in the Fish and Game Department's interpretation is treated as a subset of non-resident use. So that means that if we, like when they're looking at overall use, whether through outfitter use reports or otherwise, they're saying that any outfitted use is non-resident use. The problem with that, beyond the fact that some of that use may actually be resident use, is when it comes to any limitation. So this new action to cap a hunt or to cap previously general hunts. Because in that case, if we're saying that general, that this any non-resident use, any outfitted use is also non-resident use, then we are subject also by their interpretation to those reductions. The fundamental basis of IOGA's comment and position throughout this process has been the language in statute was drafted intentionally, and so the key sections of that language bore directly on this question. So you'll see up on the screen, while it is the intent of that allocated tags be part of the overall number of tags issued in a given hunt. So that's saying, Fish and Game is going to allocate in a given hunt. That's going to be a number, a top level number. It is clear in statute that those tags, so that allocated tags shall be separate from the number of tags set for residents and non-residents. And I quote the statute here because to me it's clear as day. Such outfitted allocated set aside tags shall be separate from the tag numbers set for residents and non-residents in each capped or controlled hunt unit or game management area. I hope you've all gotten a chance to read the letter if you so choose. There's some additional language speaking again to our issue with the department's interpretation, which has sort of undergirded their proposal, which has been accepted to the commission. Our comment goes on to say, so beyond taking issue with their interpretation, it goes on to lay out why the department, not least the state, should not be concerned about considering outfitted use as a separate type of use and outfitted tags as a separate type of tag from standard non-resident, which I think the argument is sound. Really, at a certain point, we're playing a game of semantics. They are interested in presenting to the resident hunting public that they have reduced non-resident participation. They're afraid that if they show non-resident use and outfitted use side by side, that will look like more non-resident use. So what we asked them to do were these things. One, in general, to maximize use of the set-aside pool. So currently we are not using the full measure of tags in the set-aside pool that we, in theory, can. What that requires is that the Fish and Game Commission, by rule or through rulemaking, increase the current proportion of tags in the set-aside to the full 25%. So that would take it, Jeff can give you the exact numbers, but something from 1,900 to 2,400 on elk, right, Jeff? You're on mute, but I'm gonna take that as a cent. Uncapped. So, and then we go on to the more particular motions, and effectively all we've done in our comment on these motions is taken their language, but to say that our tags shall be counted and allocated separately from non-resident tags and any reduction in non-resident tags. So any reduction in non-resident participation, same for regular deer tags, same for whitetail. Using the statutorily established formula. So we further asked that, we understood that sort of on the eve of this, that even were, so if the commission decided to not adopt our recommendations, but rather to adopt the department's recommendations, we figured that was pretty likely, unfortunately. And so in that event, also asked that the commission consider this down here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. So this language that Jeff and some others helped put together was essentially asking that the commission, specific to elk zones, so that elk A and B tags, that the commission concretize or codify that they will not touch the tags currently allocated as based on historic use in existing capped hunts, in order to accommodate the increased number of allocated tags necessary to incorporate these newly capped hunts. That has been their intent, at least in conversation. But we asked that they formalize that intent, which they also did not do. Jeff may go into this, but the piece of good news, I wish they'd done it at this meeting, but the piece of good news is that in terms of the set aside, that petition that IOGA submitted, it's a formal petition, will be taken up at the next commission meeting. So they will have to officially decide whether or not to adopt or approve our petition that they engage in rulemaking in order to increase the number of tags in the set aside to its maximal capacity. That was a pretty, for me, a pretty quick overview. If anybody has questions on that, you can post them in the chat, give me a call, or if they're really quick, ask them now. Otherwise, I will pass it along to Jeff. So if you do, shout, raise your hand, whatever, or put it in the chat. Otherwise, Jeff, it's all yours. And you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm unmuted. So let's do a quick review of elk allocations. And it all starts with the total numbers of tags, non-resident tags. And as you can see there on the screen, there are 12,815 non-resident tags. Allocation, the set aside came into being a long time ago due to IOGA asking for that. And at that time, they took a number that was about our use at that point, which ended up being 2,400 elk tags that go into the set aside. That has stayed the same and has been very adequate for what we have done. And part of the reason that's been adequate is because a lot of our tags were coming straight out of the non-resident pool outside of the set aside. So once they got done with what I'm going to start calling the historic cap zones, there is a total of 1,918 tags dedicated to that. There are currently 2,400 elk tags in the set-aside zone. All allocated tags come out of the set-aside pool. And so that pool of tags of 2,400 was not sufficient to cover all of the new cap zones when they went across the state. There's over 850 historic use tags in all of those new cap zones. So the proportion that they ended up with was that magical number of 58.8%. So that's why you see that one happening there. So the immediate result of that is that if that is the zone that you're pulling your tags from, you will have an allocation based on all the number factors, that it should be about 60% of your past use. But that other 40%, if you're going to make it up, needs to come out of the non-resident pool. And as Aaron has already talked about, IOGA is already taking action through a petition to the commission to increase the number of elk tags and deer tags to the 25%. Okay, any questions on that piece of things? When they added up the number in deer, they are currently sufficient, but not by much. So let's look at deer allocations. And Aaron, if you can go back to that, the commission where they adopted the staff recommendation, or does it tell it in that one?
Is this what you're talking about, or are you talking about in their proposal, Jeff?
Back to the gold sheet.
Here?
Yes.
Or further up. Okay.
No, you got it. So the last motion here, commission adopt staff recommendations to allocate tags for the use by outfitted regular deer tag and whitetail deer tag based on the sliding scale. So luckily for all of us, as the department worked through this process, they did realize that there was not going to be a one shoe fits all proposal here. So when we're talking about a sliding scale, they basically said, if the use in a unit is currently between 0 and 15%, we're going to adopt a 10% maximum non-resident use. If it's between 15 and on up to 60, we're going to adopt a 15%. And in certain backcountry units, the non-resident numbers will be frozen. So that's kind of the three different pieces of it. And then the second part of this came in under their interpretation of the law. If the outfitted use did not exceed 50% of the total non-resident tags, then they would allocate 100% of the highest outfitted use. If it exceeds 50%, then they would cut it back to 50% of the non-resident tags. So obviously, you may have had a huge amount of non-resident tags there in the past, but if it became 15% of the number of residents that were in that unit, that tag number shrank dramatically, which means that even though the use may not have been 50% originally, under the new 15% law, it now might exceed 50%. So in the regular deer tag allocation, in these following units, and Aaron, you could just go back to the agenda. All the way to the top. So I've listed one right there. I've listed in the agenda the regular deer tag allocation, those unit numbers, 10A, 17, 20, 28, 26, 34, 35, 4778. Those units exceeded the 50%, and therefore they are going to get less than a full allocation. The backcountry units, if you look at the info sheet we sent you, they're going to have those laid out for you, and you can look at those, and we should have a discussion about that at some future time. The whitetail deer allocation, those units, 4, 4A, 7, 16A, 20, 20A, and 21, all are receiving less than 100% allocation. So, Aaron, we probably just need to identify where that's at. So at the top of your newsletter, there's a thing up there that says handouts for agenda item 5A.
Here we go. And Jeff, we're actually doing pretty okay on time in the agenda. I just pointed out the second area where we disagreed strongly, and as does the language and statute with the department, was on this 50% issue that Jeff's talking about right now. So their interpretation was that the total number of tags allocated to the outfitted public could not exceed 50% of the total number of non-resident tags in any given hunt. And that comes back to their interpretation of outfitted tags being the same as non-resident tags rather than different as statute establishes them. Whereas by the language and statute, by our understanding and intent, and Mr. Watts here was a part of all of this and could speak to it as well, but the way that would actually go and what that actually means is that in any given hunt, let's say that the total number of tags allocated to all the outfitters in that hunt were 100, but then some of those outfitters went out and they picked up some additional hunters, and they got between all of them 10 additional hunters, that they could altogether, the number of tags allocated to outfitters could become 110, and that some of those tags could be taken from the non-resident quota insofar as the number of new tags, so additional tags after the original allocated number, did not exceed 50%. So rather than it being absolute, it was a relative process and structure for the ability for those tags to increase or an outfitted businesses to grow within some bounds for the commission. So just wanted to highlight that because it is a pretty central and important part of or important point of dissent with the department and the commission on this, and one that will definitely affect folks in those units. So I'll leave it there. And Jeff, if you could direct me to the page where I forgot what numbers we were looking at already.
So Aaron, if you can just scroll slowly down through this piece, like right here we have the non-resident A tag limits. And if you look across there, you've got your different zones, total number of tags, resident tags, non-resident tags. And so this tells you the breakup between resident and non-resident and what the non-resident limit's going to be. And so for the first 7 pages, that's what this is. Let's go on down to the next one. This is the B tags. Same process there you're going to come across. So if you're in the Palisades zone, you went from 102 down to 59. So it's, there's some pretty dramatic decreases here. Let's go to the next one. So this is the non-resident regular, and they really confuse you by putting the GMUs in random order. Haven't really quite figured out why, but so here you see the non-resident limit was 15. Oh, I know what they did. They used the non-resident percentage. See that first one in unit 21, 39%. And so that got reduced to 15. So obviously, they went from 245 to 93 tags. That is a significant reduction. And as you go on down, let's go on down to the next page. Now you're seeing that they're down from 10% to 1. And then in the blue, highlighted on the bottom, are what they're considering the backcountry units. These are the units that did not get reduced, but instead got frozen. Okay, next, and there's your last group of those backcountry units. Go on down to the next one. Now we're talking whitetail. And again, here you have the high use being 43% in Game Management Unit 1, reduced down to 15%. So, 66% of the tags disappeared. It went from 376 to 131. And so that has an effect on the amount of outfitted tags that are available. Let's go on down to the next one. And there's your backcountry units. Let's go on down to the next one. So once you get to page 8, now you're talking about what the allocation is. So when you match this page up with the first page, if you're looking at the Pioneer Zone, where we're down now to 299 non-resident tags, maximum outfitter allocation at 50% of that is 149. Reported outfitted use is 135, but the allocation is only going to come in at 79. So those are the type of units that it's obviously going to be a scramble, and there just isn't much growth space. Salmon Zone, 98. 49 is a maximum allocation, and the reported outfitted use is 48. So let's talk about where they got that number from. The reported outfitted use is looking back at each zone or unit and adding up all of the outfitted use for the year of 18 and for the year of 19. And then the state law says that they will take the higher of those two numbers, and that will become the reported outfitter use. So those numbers should be the highest of 18 and 19 of outfitted activity within that zone or unit. That being said, I've had conversations with several outfitters that have looked at the numbers and said, nope, that is below what my use was for that particular unit. So I have no doubts that there will be some of those that are not going to be correct. Let's go on down to the next one. So here we have the B tags. Here's your Palisades. Non-resident limit is 59. Allocation is up to 29. The actual use is 11. So an important distinction to talk about here is that on their website, when they say the number of non-resident tags available, it includes the number of outfitted, allocated tags. So as we look at those numbers, realize that the proposed outfitter tag allocation has to come out of the non-resident limit tags. Okay, down to the next one.
Jeff, I may another thing to note real quickly is, so on their sheet here, they have maximum outfitter allocation. And in some cases, this is pretty close to outfitted reported use and to proposed allocation. But in most cases, the proposed allocation is lower than the reported use, and not so much in elk because we're running into a set aside issue. But as we go down into deer, keep in mind that if you're in particular, and actually to start with, actually with elk, if the commission decides to go forward with the association's petition to increase the number of tags in the set aside. But let's take this example of Palisades. Let's say that they propose, because they're prorating, because they don't have enough in the set aside. Let's say that they allocate those 6 tags, but that the historic use remains at 11. Again, informally, they have, and this would be required by statute anyway, they have committed to counting that historic use when next allocating. So let's say in an additional 2 years, 23 and 2023, so that they would be, if those tags were in the set aside, they'd be allocating 11 versus 6. So it's still worth making sure, even if there's the delta between the reported and the proposed, or between the maximum and the reported, if you have additional documented use, if yours is low, or you think that yours is probably low in any one of these to be capped zones or units when we get down to the deer, then it would certainly be worth getting that information to the board and to the department, in particular with deer, where there's more than likely enough tags to actually meet that allocation. Okay, sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
On to the next page, talking about deer. So this is regular deer, and again, game management units are interesting to try and follow, but you can match them up with the previous page. So again, most of the units are going to have 100% of allocation. And again, in regular deer tags, 10A, 17, 20, 28, 26, 34, 35, 47, and 78 have a reduction. So if you can find one of those on there, let's look at 10A. You're down just a little bit, Aaron. Down, yep, there you go. So there's 10A, total tags of 632. The non-resident now is at 15%, which is 95. Maximum outfitter allocation is 47. Reported use was 54. And they're only going to get 47. So this is where it butts into that half of the 50% thing. Looking down the road, this becomes more significant because 2 years from now, they are going to look at having resident reductions. If your number of residents decreases, then that affects the number of non-residents because they're based on percentage of the residents. So that is something that we need to have a future discussion on. Now, you can all find your own units in that regards. Let's go down to the next page. Here we're looking at the ones in blue being the backcountry. And a couple of these got restricted. 17, 330 overall non-resident tags. So that put the limit at 165, and there's 240 outfitted use reported. So if you are in unit 17, the difference between 165 and 240 is about 30%. So the allocation there will be 30% less. Let's go to the next page. So now we're on to the whitetail, and again, similar problems. Next page. So this information is now posted. I expect all of you to go take the time to look at your own units. That will give you an idea. Think about how many other people outfit within that particular unit or zone, and how Add up your math.
Yeah, in this document, along with all the others that are in here, plus some, I think, should be in the newsletter, either one of the newsletters that went out to you. But if you lost it at some point, give me a shout, get it back out to you.
So any questions on the allocations, elk or deer? Rusty, unmute yourself and ask your question. There you go.
Okay, so in unit 27, we are frozen. It's going to be the same as last year's allocation or not? For A and B
Nope.
elk tags.
Let's see. Yep. Are we talking about elk or deer?
Elk, A and B elk tags.
So
For
remember
unit
that
27.
in any unit where you have had a capped hunt and you have had an allocation, those are not proposed for any changes. But if you go back to the deer, and I think you need to go to about page 10 or something on that one more. Yep, 11. So now you're looking at one of these backcountry zones. The number of non-residents are half of it, and that is frozen. So there are 193 reported outfitted use, and that's what they're gonna allocate because they have the numbers to make that one happen. Okay. Any other questions on those two?
How is this going to affect on unit 27, that outfitter allocated hunt number 1160, the rut hunt for mule deer?
So
Is that
that
going
is
to be the same?
that is a controlled hunt, and that will come up for review at the March meeting. And I imagine they will look at the overall number of tags that have not been used or have been used. Has there been growth or has there been no growth? And so that one is yet to come. Any controlled hunt will come up for review during the March commission meeting when they set seasons.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet. Any other questions? All right. So now we're into the really good stuff. The action plan to buy the non-resident tags. So we've given you the basis to take a look at what your numbers are. You need to sit down and identify what your needs are. Realize that if you're in a new capped elk zone, the best allocation you get will be 60% of your historic use in the 2 years, your average 2 years of 18 and 19. So my suggestion is that for those of you that are in that spot, you should probably try to purchase 40 to 50% of whatever that number of hunters are that you have in a new elk allocation. Deer units, you need to identify your unit. You're either going to be at 100%, which is good, or you're going to have some type of cut depending on the unit. Look at your unit, do your math, figure out what your cut's going to be, and then you'll know how many more of those tags you're going to have to get. If you are interested in growing your business, you need to buy tags out of the non-resident pool December 1st. Because after that, with a few exceptions, you don't know how many of those tags will be left. As I've talked to outfitters, I've told them to buy an insurance policy. If you think you're going to get 100% of your deer tags, I would go buy 20% of my deer tags out of the non-resident pool, because I cannot guarantee how the number system will end up on the other end of this. So buy a little extra.
Does when Jeff's talking about these percentages and about the degree, the percentage of tags you might need to buy, does that make sense to everybody? And how you go about that? I mean, he's going to get into that part, but before you go on with more percentages, Jeff, anybody have any questions about that? All right.
If you're taking 20 deer hunters and you think you're going to get 20 allocated tags, I would buy tags for 4 hunters, because there may or may not be all the accurate numbers that these numbers have been derived from. Prioritize your tag purchases. Take a look at what you need to get. Figure out which ones are most important. Group your hunters together and have a, here's my highest priority to my least priority. So the next piece, plan your purchases for online. You are now entering a new age of buying and purchasing non-resident tags, and it will never be the same again. Take a look at your priority, figure out which ones you need to buy.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, question on that online thing there.
Yes.
I just was talking to Cassidy at the Lewis office about that online only thing, and she was saying we can just walk in there and buy those tags, those whitetail deer tags and regular deer tags without having to do it online.
So I have 2 answers to you there. I can tell you that the regional offices are not as well informed about this as the state office, and that things may well change over the next week. As we've had discussions about allocation with anybody over the last year in the Fish and Game Department, they've said, well, first off, you need to use your allocation. So if you're going to walk into the department, they're going to say, do you have allocated tags? Well, yes, you do. When will you get those? Well, with the new allocation, you'll have those by probably about the end of April. With the old allocation in all of the other capped zones, they won't make that decision until March. The commission will not. And then after that, they'll send it over to IOGLB for designation. So you'll have those about the end of April.
She was saying that the outfitter tag set aside for deer will be available after the first of the year. Did I get that wrong?
I think all the new deer tags will probably be available by the end of January. So here's the other problem with going into either a vendor or to the department. The Fish and Game has been busy sending out an email to everybody that purchased a tag over the last 5 years. They want to sell these non-resident tags. How many of those people have a brother-in-law that lives in Salmon or Lewiston or Twin Falls or Boise? How many of them are going to start lining up at 3 o'clock? So yes, you might be able to go get one, but if you're second in place and your tags are limited, you will not be able to purchase a license.
Okay.
I'm telling you to do it online because it puts you on an equal footing with everyone else that's trying to purchase it.
Okay. Yeah, just thinking because we buy quite a few, and it's tough to do that online one at a time. We usually just take them in the regional office.
So think about what the office procedure is. Even if you arrive there at 1 o'clock in the morning and you have 10 tags to buy, they are running on the same exact computer system that everybody else is. They have to buy them one at a time. And by the time they get to the fifth one, if you're in a limited zone, there may not be any tags left. If you're in a zone, if you're in the Middle Fork, the Selway, or the Lolo, you can wait 2 weeks. If you are in any one of these units where that number of tags is under 400, it'll be minutes.
Yeah.
And
Understand.
this is advice. This is what the Sawtooth Zone outfitters have learned, which you are now learning about computer lottery draws, because that's what this action will make the sale of non-resident tags into.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
So yeah, Matt, we may want to go in and change the, do we have to do online, or at least make sure and clarify. But I think the just point of, you can only isolate so many variables. If you copy and paste, have a Word document open with all the information and just get it in there as fast as possible, then you're controlling one of those few variables you can't control. So
Yeah, I guess that was the thing, is it says it must be done online.
yeah, no, that,
And
and I'll have to, and I'll follow up with Jeff, and we'll follow up with the department on that. Yeah, and if we're wrong there, then we'll make sure and clarify in the document and send it back out. But yeah, thanks for that.
So I know that several outfitters have talked to their favorite frontline person at the department, and I appreciate them stepping up to help. But I just looked at this from the point of, how long does it take for them to process a license? How many people are going to be in front of you? And what's your chances of actually making that happen? Obviously it goes down the less amount of licenses that are available. So let's talk about how to purchase one online. First off, you have to have a user profile. Most of you already have that because you have your client's information. In order to open up, if they already have a user profile established, it's easy. You need their last name, the last four of their social security number, and their birth date. That'll get you into their user profile. If you don't have one established, if that person has never hunted in Idaho, then you'll need to use all the information that you're buying their license and tag with, fill that out and get it done. You can do that at any time, so start now. Check them, make sure they all work. At 1 minute after midnight on December 1st, hunting licenses will go on sale. Start purchasing for everybody that you need to buy a tag for. Before 9:45 in the morning, you've got to have all of your hunting license purchased. Because this is a new system, I don't think that you're actually going to be able to put the license in the cart. Because one of the things I learned as I listened to the commission meeting, when the licensing people were talking, is that once you start at 10 o'clock, when you select the product, when you select that tag and you say add to cart, it takes it out of inventory, which does not make it available to sale to anyone else. So once you get it in your cart, you should be pretty good. But I would not hesitate to get it purchased as soon as possible. So my next recommendation is you should take a look at how many tags you really want and what your risk is of having those tags sell out fast. If you're in a high risk, I would suggest that you do not do more than 2 purchases per computer. You now have a great reason to have a tag purchase party at whatever spot you can find that has the bandwidth to support it. Invite your friends and employees to bring their laptop, and each person with a laptop is responsible for buying 2 tags. When we've done this in the Sawtooth, we have found that if we got beyond 2 tags, we were really fortunate. Everybody's good for the first tag, but after that, the odds go down rapidly.
Jeff, can you clarify for me and folks why you say two per computer limit? Is that just anecdotal of how many you've purchased before the actual server, or
Where it says sold out? Well, the Sawtooth sells out in less than 5 minutes, and it has about 180 tags. How long does it take you to complete a purchase and start in on the next one?
right? Okay, so you're saying more so just to increase your capacity, your team of folks to do it, so that you can maximize speed, versus that at a certain point you run into some sort of technological barrier.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
At 10 o'clock and 1 second, the floodgates open. And I would anticipate that this new system may have 2,000 to 5,000 people online purchasing. So remember the steps. Get the user profile done. Buy the hunting license, because that by itself takes a couple of minutes. Have it all set up so all you have to do is go in, select the tag, put it in the cart, proceed to checkout. And if you have to buy, if the deer tags are what's limited here, and you're going to be fine on elk tags, don't mess around with an elk tag. Just buy the deer tag. Don't buy a bear tag. Don't buy a cougar tag. Don't buy a wolf tag. Buy the tags you have to have, because that computer is only going to take the first number of people that punch that button before it runs out. It's going to be amazing to watch, but it will be a computer lottery. So be fast.
Jeff, I have just a quick clarifying question. You've listed this pretty clearly in the Q&A, but this was helpful for me to know. So just to reiterate, you are saying that we can purchase our hunter's licenses at between 12:01 on December 1st and 9 a.m. overnight. We could get the hunting licenses purchased, and then
Correct.
after 10 a.m. like at 10 a.m., then we can deal with the tags. So it's 2 different purchases, correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, great.
Yes, you definitely want to make 2 different purchases. Okay.
By the way,
any
folks, quick interruption,
other-
Jeff, to say everybody can also thank Jess and Steve contributed to this Q&A quite a bit as well, and figuring out these questions. So thanks, guys.
Any other questions on that process?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So they are requiring the non-residents to have their driver's license number in the system now?
You were really broken up on that. You want to try getting closer to your microphone and trying that one again?
Are they actually requiring the driver's license number to be in there for non-residents now?
Anybody have an answer to that one?
Yes, they are requiring that now. They are requiring the driver's license number, the state that it's issued by, and the expiration date. I I was able to get in and test a client that we already had in there with a profile. And I believe there will be a space for you to update that. But I know that going forward, they're going to want that on file. I'm not 100% sure about the time frame of when.
About a youth.
Well, they're not going to have an ID.
Yeah.
Steve's asking, how about youth hunters? And I don't know the answer to that. Our local sporting goods store tipped me off to that. So that's all I know on that. But I believe you should have it on hand at least.
Any other questions on this process? This is the most important process you've got. Okay. Allocation timelines. When to expect your allocated tags. As I've already talked, the process for Idaho Outfitters and Guides Licensing Board, we think will take about 6 weeks. So if we look at the calendar and we're looking at mid to late March, that's when the Fish and Game Commission will set those numbers for controlled hunts. And they should solidify what the historical capped zones have got. And so as soon as those numbers are there, they go over to IOGLB and they go through the designation process. And as soon as they're done, when they're done with those numbers, they're going to send an email out to each outfitter. And then if you don't like what you see there, if you think that that's the wrong number, you now have 2 weeks to get back to IOGLB and let them know that their information is not correct. And basically at that point, when they hear that, they're going to contact all of the other outfitters in that hunt. And somehow or another after that, the board will reach a decision as to whether or not they will reallocate the tags in that particular hunt. So they have to go through the designation process. They have to go through the appeal process. They have to give time for the appeal process to get finished. That is that 6 weeks period. And because they haven't ever done this before, much less for the whole state of Idaho and every single outfitted tag, we don't know what the time frame is going to be. But I think 6 weeks is about the question. When I talked to John Rochelle on Friday after the commission meeting, he said that the department had sent the numbers over to IOGLB on Friday. I have not talked to anybody over there to see where they're at. There is an IOGLB meeting December 2nd and 3rd. I think myself and maybe Aaron will be at that one. Anybody
I'll be
else
there.
who wants to attend, you can certainly jump in there and ask those questions. The questions we're going to be asking is, how's this process going? Luckily, you have 2 members on that IOGLB board that are very hunt savvy, Tammy Overacker and Louise Stark. And they will be asking all the right questions of making sure this thing comes together. So that's what I know about when to expect. How do you estimate how many you might have coming? Well, you all probably should have your 2018 and 2019 copy of your use report you have submitted to IOGLB. You can take those 2 reports and average your use per unit or hunt. And that will give you what your basis is going in. Now remember, if you're talking about elk, you're still only going to get 60% of that. If you're talking about deer, depending on the unit, you have to figure out that. But
And
that's
just to clarify again, because there was a question earlier, or to reaffirm, we're only talking about the previously uncapped general A and B elk tags when we're saying, well, in this question, because the capped ones are not factoring in at this point. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
correct. So now let's talk about forms. I think I've been having conversations with Fish and Game and IOGLB about forms for about 2 years. There are 2 forms that you need to be aware of, not using yet, but soon. The first form will be an outfitter certification form, very similar to the one that you have been using to buy a set-aside tag. You will need to have that to buy an allocated tag. So you're going to get real familiar with it. So those forms, last time I talked to Fish and Game, they said they were working on those and they would have them available by the time allocated tags were ready to be purchased from your Fish and Game. The second form is the form you would use to report your use to the Fish and Game department for all of the non-resident tags that you're going to buy out of the non-resident pool, or anyone else who comes with their own tag. They've purchased it. They're going to come hunting with you. In order to record use of that person, there will be a form, which should be pretty simple because it's going to be their name, the outfitter name, the outfitter hunting license, or the outfitter license number, the hunter license number, and the tag number, and probably signatures from both of you. So the best time to get that is while they're hunting, right? You're going to want to have 20 of those printed and sitting in the cab of your truck so that you can capture everybody's use. Those forms have to be turned in at a regional office prior to December 20th in order to count for your next historic use in the next allocation, which will be in the year 23. So I'd like to give you those forms, but unfortunately they're not available yet. As soon as they are, we will make sure that we include them in a newsletter so that you will have them. Let's talk about reporting use. Right now, Fish and Game is not responsible for 2020 use reports. You've probably all received the online information about filling out your use report for IOGLB. Please make sure that it's correct before you do that, before you hit the send button. And I have not had the chance to fill one out yet. I will try and do that in the next week. It would be probably a good thing to talk about on our next Zoom meeting in a week from today. So I'll try and have more information about the online reporting to IOGLB next week. Some other things about allocation. The first rule of allocation is use all of your allocated tags. So I'm instructing you to go out and purchase as many as you can, or need to, actually, as many as you're able to and need to out of the non-resident pool. And then after a while, you're going to receive an allocation. We will be in touch with you as time goes on to remind you that you have to exchange those. You have to exchange the ones you're purchasing now for an allocated tag at a regional office for $5 so that you utilize all of your allocated tags. Okay?
Is that exchange process certain?
Yes. In fact, that exchange process got wrote into the law, so it's good.
So it's not like a private hunter who needs an excuse, a viable excuse like a hardship, a sickness or something in order to return a tag. It's an exchange for an allocated tag that's certain.
Yes, you're going to trade them back in. You're going to take 5 of your non-resident tags prior to season. This can't be after you've started hunting. Go down to the office and exchange them for the allocated tags that are sitting underneath your outfitter number.
And if a hunter purchased that tag, can we exchange a hunter purchase tag versus an outfitter purchase tag for that hunter?
Yes.
Okay, good.
As long as it's prior to season. Once you're at season, so remember when these tags are all going to go away. Every allocated tag goes back to the Fish and Game if it's not used by
July 19.
No, July 31. But prior to that, on July 19th, if you still have it underneath your outfitter, it will then go into a pool of tags for that hunt, which are then available to any other outfitter in that hunt. We're kind of jumping ahead, but yes. First rule allocation, use all your allocated tags. Buy early. That's what we've really been talking about. Remember, allocation is a floor, it's not a ceiling. It doesn't restrict you only to that number. It gives you that number to work with, and then you can increase it from there. You increase it by buying out of the non-resident pool of tags December 1st. You increase it by taking resident hunters. They also count as outfitted hunters. You can also loan them out. If your neighbor needs 2 extra allocated tags and you don't have somebody for them that year, you can transfer them to him and retain the credit. So those are subjects that we will continue to go over as we go forward.
And in 2021, these are all going to disappear still on the end of July.
That is correct.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions on those things that Jeff just went over? Because those, I mean, we've talked about those or written about those any number of times, but they are the most important and core principles going forward. Anything? Nope.
So you also now have this calendar that's on your screen in your notes up there on top. You're welcome to print it. I will tell you that it is still subject to change because I have not had time to run around to the different agencies and confirm that there are no other dates that I need to be putting in here. And I will do that. So you'll see an updated one of these sometime in the next month or so.
Yep. So the key caveats on this, like Jeff said, is that there may be additional dates that are important. The other one, as he already mentioned, is that there are some areas which are called out here, like the November 24th date and the
July 12th date.
Yep. Where we just don't know fundamentally how long it's going to take. And frankly, it'll depend on probably in large part how many contestations there are or appeals there are to the IOGLB of reported use, because the actual formulas for that are programmed and easy, but how much of that they have to go through, there's a designated 14 days that they have to give people to respond, that type of thing is going to be in flux. So grain of salt.
So you do see the rest of those dates, July 31, capped hunt allocated tags that have not been utilized or returned to Fish and Game. So this is a good one to print, put it on your computer, realize that when you get a new one, take this one down and update it with the new one, because the new one will have more information. Coming soon on Zoom, we're going to talk about online reporting for this year. We'll try and have that ready for next week. Talk more about Fish and Game reporting in 2021. We'll try and do a segment on how designation really works. Get you the rules so that you can look at that. Try and understand what happened to the pool, because many of you have been using a pool in one way or another. And then my last one is, whose dance is this anyway? You know, one of the things that keeps people confused is we're working with two different agencies. We're working with Fish and Game, whose job it is to set the numbers. We're working with IOGLB, whose job it is to designate those numbers to the outfitted operations, who then send it back to the Fish and Game to sell those tags to the outfitted clients. So we'll try and put a little bit more of a understanding on how that process works and where it's at. I am open for
Yeah, Jeff,
questions.
I was going to say, surprisingly, we did great on time. So we've got, in terms of the allotted time, allocated time, we have quite a bit. If anybody has questions or clarifications, anything.
And as always, you can call myself or Aaron when you get stuck on something and you need an answer. Call one of us up and ask.
So questions, clarifications, or for those in the know, if we missed anything here that you think bears mentioning.
Okay, looking good. I don't see any. Do you?
I don't see any so far. Jess, you see anybody?
I do not.
All right, well.
That was clear as mud. Just call us when you're ready.
Yeah, you know something's wrong when you get through an hour and 15 minutes of allocation and nobody has a question. There's just nothing honest about that end result. But yeah, if you do have questions, appreciate you coming out here. And for those who weren't able to make it, we've been recording this, so I'm going to try to, as internet allows, to upload it, get a link to it so you can watch it again. The next Zoom is scheduled for the 30th. So in the meantime, feel free to give, like Jeff said, offer myself or Jeff a call if you have any questions. Otherwise, you could also send questions or suggestions to me or to Jeff for the next Zoom call on the 30th. So just like Christmas Eve for hunt outfitters, huh?
That's it. Waiting for the big day.
Yeah.
So, my objective for that meeting is just to make sure that everybody's as comfortable as you're going to get with this process, and answer any last minute questions, update you on anything that has changed in the week, because we see changes.
All
And if
right.
you
So
see any out there, please call us, let us know.
final call for questions, clarifications, comments before we pull this thing to an end. Right on cue, somebody leaves. All right, folks. Well, hey, appreciate you taking the time. Give us a call if you have questions, and we will be talking to you soon.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.